I lost my father when I was 21. And then 5 years later, a week apart, I lost my sister and my mom. In 2014, I got married in October, got pregnant in December, had my first child before my 1 year
You
anniversary.
had
I became a mother, without my sister, without my father. When I lost my father being 21, I was so angry for so long. Now here I am, I'm 40. I have three kids and a husband, and I love my life. I feel lucky. But the road to here was as ugly could be.
The world is obsessed with fast track success, and it's easy to think people become successful overnight. But let's face it, more often than not, what we see on social media is total BS. I'm here to look past the perception of perfect success and focus on life's detours, perceived mistakes, and even wrong choices, and understand the real road traveled up the career ladder. After all, we're all effing up.
Stephanie McCarty is the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Taylor Morrison, one of the nation's largest residential home builders and community developers. Since 2018, Stephanie has reshaped Taylor Morrison's culture and national brand, led acquisitions and organic growth strategies that have helped drive revenue growth from $4 billion to $9 billion, helped earn America's most trusted home builder by Live Story Research for 11 consecutive years, and advanced the future of new home shopping through innovative customer acquisition tools. Prior to joining Taylor Morrison, Stephanie had a history of success leading communication functions for the University of Phoenix, Insight, On Semiconductor, and McMurray Incorporated. Stephanie serves on the board of directors for Sicilian Partners, serves as a member of the Builder Advisory Group for Zillow Group, and after suffering a heart attack in her early 30s, Stephanie also serves as an executive leader for the Greater Phoenix Go Red for Women movement for the American Heart Association. Stephanie has been named one of Forbes' top 50 entrepreneurial CMOs of 2025, one of the most innovative CMOs of 2024 by Business Insider, a trailblazing woman in marketing, service, and experience by Reuters, and a top marketing leader by Housing Wire. Stephanie received a Bachelor of Arts degree from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University.
Stephanie, welcome to Effing Up. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Let's chat about what work looks like for you right now. What do you do on the daily?
So I'm a chief marketing officer for Taylor Morrison Homes, which is a national builder and community developer. We have 23 markets. We sell and close roughly around 13,000 homes a year. I've been in Taylor Morrison now to be 11 years in June, 7.5 years in the CMO capacity. And I think about every day is a little bit different, but right now the housing sector is a little noisy. Lots changing from the administration, how consumers are thinking about home ownership, how that fits into their American dream story. If they can afford it, affordability is a real crisis right now. So I think every day, like, how do we show up as a builder to hold consumers' hands? It's a big decision. Unlike a lot of other CMOs that might be operating in a CPG space or QSR, like this is not a repeat purchase that someone does daily, weekly, monthly. I think on average, it's somewhere between 5 and 7 years. And with the low interest rates from COVID, a lot of people are staying put a lot longer. So it's really what's the value proposition of a new home? How are we showing up for consumers in today's environment, which is probably more noisier than ever? But it is really fun because the product that we sell is a meaningful. It doesn't come without its challenges. It's a very traditional industry. Some even call it male, pale, and stale. So from a young female perspective, I've also met my own challenges growing up in the home building industry, but I really do. I love it.
Let's go back to your childhood, teenage years. I'm curious if there's a theme or situation experience that you can look to that you feel like formed who you are in your career.
I had two amazing parents, and my mother was a registered nurse for over 35 years. My dad owned a small construction company, which is funny and ironic that I'm also now in construction myself.
Yeah.
But he was the one in the bunny suit, removing asbestos, demoing, rebuilding. So I literally found myself at a young age around the water cooler. in boots, in dirt. So I feel very at home on job sites today. But I was an only child for the most of my life. My mother had a daughter from a prior marriage. And so when I was born, my sister was 15 years old. So I essentially grew up an only child. I was very independent at a very young age. Both parents worked. I was in daycare post school and had a babysitter during the summer. So I had to adapt always and find myself alone and entertain myself and solve problems. That independence has stayed with me because I don't need a lot of collaboration in order to solve a problem. Also, at a really early age, I learned to really trust myself and trust my intuition and trust my feelings. And I grew up in a household where, fortunately, I saw every emotion. I wasn't sheltered from the good or the bad. My parents loved hard, they fought hard. I saw resolution. So I would see kind of full circle, like what's natural and normal in a relationship.
Wow.
And so I think that I'm not afraid of sharing and showing emotion, which I feel like in corporate America and just with people in general, people are very guarded. And I think that we should honor how we feel and our emotions and not push it down because that only leads to deeper problems later. And I think showing up as a whole person at work is essential. We actually do these personality tests when you get hired at a new company. We do something called the predictive index, which shows who you are. And as an HR professional, I'm sure you know exactly what that
Very
means.
familiar.
But predictive index, it's like how you show up at work and who you really are. And a lot of times those graphs are very different.
Yep.
I remember as an executive team, we did it together for the first time in 2018. And of 12 of us, I was the only one where who I am and how I show up, the chart was exactly the same. I don't put on this mask or this uniform and walk into the office as anyone different. I, for better or worse, show up exactly as I am in almost every situation. My sister moved out when I was 3. And then my sister and I didn't have a real relationship until I graduated high school.
Yeah.
At the time, she was going through a divorce and in her 30s. And so all of a sudden, we were like at the same playing field. So for a while before eventually she passed when she was 43, but we did have a good relationship in our more formative kind of adult years. My parents were busy. And so they fell asleep early. And I just found myself alone a lot.
Yeah. I understand that completely.
Yeah.
When you were a teenager, what did you think about your future? Was there something that you felt like you were going to go off and do? Were you thinking about school?
In high school, I wasn't the one that was already thinking about college. I think in my mind, I thought about college as something you were just supposed to do,
Yeah.
not as much of an option. And so I just rolled with it. I ended up going to Arizona State University, which was 20 minutes from where I grew up. In my younger years, I was in dance. And so that translated into like cheerleading come like 8th, 9th grade. But I was very tall at a young age. And so all my girlfriends that I used to dance with got into gymnastics and cheerleading. And I couldn't tumble. I could barely do a cartwheel. A back handspring was like completely out of the question. And in junior high, the cheer coach at the time had told my mom, if she really wants to get into this, maybe you should put her into like diving or intramural diving or something so she can get comfortable flipping into the water. If she can flip into the water, she could flip on the ground. And at the time, I was like, this is so dumb. Why would I do this? My mom's like, well, if you want to be in cheer with your friends, this is what she recommended. So one summer, I think it was after 8th grade, I did this diving thing. Because I was flexible, I was actually really good at it. And it became really fun. And so then all of a sudden cheer was off the table. I didn't really care about that. And so I really pursued diving. And funnily enough, like diving, I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to Arizona State.
Oh my gosh.
So that it was like one of these things you didn't expect to come into your life. And I was not very young when I started.
Wow.
So that was this weird thing in my teenage years that came into my life and then didn't leave for many years and formed how I found
all at the coach's
college.
recommendation, and you were like not even that interested. That's
I was like,
so interesting.
I just remember telling my mom, I'm like, this is the dumbest idea. This is like a way of saying she's not going to cut it, but Look over here.
This is the dumbest thing, but it's going to go ahead and set me up for success.
Good on my mom for listening.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
feel like a mom now, I'd been like, I was like so far removed from what my child's actually trying to do. Are you even listening? But it
Wow.
worked out.
Okay. So you go to Arizona State. What was the transition to college like? You weren't just there thinking about schoolwork. Like you had to obviously keep up with the scholarship and perform in that way. Were there challenges?
Yeah, I actually think about college almost like splitting it right down the middle. Like I've got my freshman, sophomore year, and then my junior and senior year. And I say that because I only dove my freshman and sophomore year. I actually only really dove my freshman year. I got into a really bad car accident when I was 20. I was T-boned by a drunk driver, and I was ear-evac to Scottsdale Osborne, which is a head trauma unit, for a brain bleed. So I was in the ICU for almost 21 days. I had to relearn how to talk,
Oh my gosh.
ability. And so I never dove again. I had to medical redshirt and then redshirt. And so when I lost my scholarship, I transitioned my school week to being only 2 days a week. And then I started working full time. And I wasn't as into school as I was when I was under a scholarship and on a team. And so I always considered the loss of diving to be my first loss in life. And you'll soon learn I have many. But that changed me in my mind. My college career, as I knew it, was over. And so I really poured myself into school. What do I want to do? What major do I really want to focus on? And then how do I just get the hell out of school and get into the real world? And I started leasing apartments. And so I was working 40 hours a week doing that. And then I just went to school the other 2 days a week, which meant at 19 and 20, I had a 7-day full day plate. But it kept me busy and kept my mind off of the loss and this complete kind of 180 of life.
Were you in the car alone?
I was. And luckily, there wasn't anyone in the passenger seat because they would not have made it. My car completely accordioned in, and the passenger side door is what hit me in my head. And then my head bounced back and broke my own window and 2 brain bleeds. And they had those big scissors cut me out of the car. My parents and I had to go back to the car to get my belongings out of it. And it didn't really resemble a car. Luckily, the other driver survived too. So I think I had the most injuries. But yeah, thank God no one else was in the car.
Did you and the other driver ever connect or speak?
I never saw him, not once.
How did you feel? Like when, oh man, so many questions on this. When did you, there's consciousness, right? Like you have consciousness, but when did you come to consciousness about this is what happened to me? I'm in the ICU. What does this mean for my future? Am I going to make it?
So the only thing I really remember is I remember waking up in the hospital and I had bandages over my head. So I could barely see. There was like a little gap where I could see under. And my arms were restrained. So I was tied to the bed.
How is that? So you don't mess with this or what?
Yeah. And I think when you have head injuries, you tend to be like combative. And so I was induced into a coma for several days. And when I came out, I had a tube in my mouth and I could hear and feel my mom and dad in the room. And so they gave me like a notepad and put it under my hand. And I just kept writing on the paper. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. Because I was 20 at the time. And I think I was leaving a party and I think I had probably had a drink or two. Not to say I was inebriated, but I think in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh.
Everyone's going to think I did it. Yeah.
I'm the young one.
Crazy college kid. Yeah. I get that.
And at the time, I think I had a bright yellow Ford Focus with "It's a Blonde Thing" sticker on the back. Totally my college identity of being super tan with super bleach blonde hair. So I just remember telling my mom it wasn't my fault. And then it was a lot of rehabilitation to come back to like my normal self. But I lost a lot of weight. I was unable to really eat for a while. And so it really shook not only me, but my family. And I took a whole semester off school to rehab and get back to myself and determine like, hey, what does the rest of college look like? And at that point, because I had to make it up as I went, I was like, okay, Now I'm Stephanie, who's just committed to getting school over with. I was a journalism major at the time, but ASU was structured back then. Your first 2 years were more general, and then you had to apply to the college that you wanted to get into. And so, right around this time when I went back to school, I was applying to the Walter Cronkite School to get in, and I was just throwing myself into school. And now I have to pay for my education. And so I'm working full time. My parents were not in a place where they could pay for my school. And so just it went from life kind of feeling more carefree, which is what you would expect college a little bit to look like, or that's what the movies tell you it is. You're finding yourself
Right.
and meeting people from all over the world and finding your real friends. But it just felt like all of that fairy tale experience was gone. And it was like, okay, now this is reality. And you're in college to get a degree, and the degree is so that you can get a good job. And so it became very matter of fact.
Yeah.
And that's how I took it. Cause I was like, all right, I'm only going to pay for school. I'm not going to drag this out. I was just trying to catch up and get out, because that's essentially what I needed. And I didn't want to be in that life or have any of those memories.
Yeah. It's almost like the fact that you had to continue to go through school to get to the other side of it was almost punishing. It's this is what got me in the mess that I'm in. And now I on to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah. You come to graduation. And is that when you join McMurray as public relations account coordinator? Or was that
Yeah.
before?
So I joined McMurray in my last semester of school as an intern.
Okay.
And then came on full time when I graduated. And so I did have a journalism degree, and I had several internships throughout. And I thought that I wanted to be a broadcast journalist and be on TV. And then while I was working through an internship at our local CBS KPHO affiliate, I met their assistant news director, and he's, "You're such a great writer. I don't think you're going to want this news anchor life. Have you thought about PR, media relations?" And so I transitioned my internship from broadcast to this media relations department and switched my emphasis on school to be more PR leaning. So McMurray was one of those PR internships that I took later in college. And it was a great introduction to an agency life where you're carrying several clients and you're billing your time in 15-minute increments. After about a year there, I was like, gosh, like I have so many cool clients, but like I'm just barely scratching the surface in all of them. And because when you're at an agency, you work under these billable hours, I found like I just didn't have the time to get as deep and granular as I wanted. And so in talking to my boss, she was like, "It sounds like you should go in-house and like work on one brand and that one brand become your baby." So I took her advice and started applying. But a lot of the in-house jobs I was applying for weren't necessarily for PR. They were just broad communication roles. So I think of the next jump after McMurray was I think of that as more of like my first big girl job. I worked at a Fortune 500 semiconductor manufacturer based in Phoenix, working on a really small communications team supporting a global enterprise. And because we were so small, I started doing executive communications at 21, 22 years old, writing on behalf of the CEO and the C-suite and trying to help them find a way to tell their organizations, hey, this is what we're marching towards. This is the vision. This is the direction the company is heading in, and trying to get 15,000 employees across the globe to buy into it and really understand, why are they coming to work? Why are they working so hard? What's the end goal here? It was a great opportunity because these executives were all engineers by trade. So storytelling and communicating wasn't like something that they were naturally very good at.
Yeah.
So I think my skill set was highly valued at the time. And I had a boss who just threw me into it. And so it was a lot of learning on the job, but I fell in love with it. And I ended up spending the next 10 plus years of my career writing on behalf of executives and painting the picture of the vision of the organization and the why and the purpose and how we're going to get there. And when you're an employee and you feel super connected to the purpose of your organization and how your role plays a part in that, It felt very purposeful at a young age because you spend so much time at work and you can't connect the dots of like your efforts and your team efforts to the end goal. It's just like, why am I doing this? I was very proud to play that role. And so I've been running around with CEOs and executives like my whole career. And I've always viewed them, for better or worse, as humans, just like me. They put their pants on one leg at a time. They might be making a crap ton more money than me. But again, when you're in your early 20s, you don't see that.
No.
Or and I think I was extremely naive, but I'm also grateful for that because I didn't know enough to change the way I showed up, I guess I should say.
Mm.
And I've carried that kind of with me
Don't
my
you
whole
also
career.
feel, though, as an only child, that played into it as well? I was always around adults. Like,
Same.
even like my parents' circle wasn't full of adults with children. And so I always had to work an adult room. When it came to working with executives, my career started as an executive assistant. And a lot of other executive assistants would be like, "Oh, how are you going to talk to them about it?" And I was like, "I'm going to go in there and deal with it." They came out of a female one of two ways, just like I did. There was just no intimidation factor for me. And I think it was just because that was life. It didn't matter who was in the room as a child. I addressed them with my eyes, I spoke to them, and that carried over. That's always served me well.
Yeah. I was like, I'm here to do a job. They need what I bring to the table. I think I just, at a very young age, never felt that I couldn't do things.
Yeah.
It's also not because I came from a lot of money or privilege. She was a wonderful mom, but she wasn't the mom that was like, you could be anything you want to be. That wasn't the conversation. I think my parents were just very good with, okay, don't get in too much trouble, get decent grades, follow this life trajectory. But there
Yeah.
was this unattainable idea of what Stephanie would or wouldn't become.
Yeah.
It was heavily dosed in realism.
It sounds like the transition to on semiconductor was a great match for you.
Perfect. Yep.
Did you have any challenges while in the role?
I was really transitioning into, okay, I've got one brand. And I remember before I accepted that job, I actually interviewed for 4 or 5 other jobs that I didn't get. I put on the suit and the turtleneck and I made sure my nails were painted a very neutral color. And I had my hair pulled back and I walked into all those interviews. I had read the whole website. I tried to know everything about that job. And finally, when I interviewed for on semiconductor, I very vividly remember wearing like a pink button up under a black coat. I let my hair down, whatever color my nails were painted that week, they just stayed. And I remember walking in the interview being like, I have no idea what a semiconductor is or how a chip gets manufactured, but I'm a really quick learner and I'm a hell of a writer. And my boss is like, yeah, you're hired. I knew my role and I was so done with pretending to know what a Six Sigma person would do because I had interviewed at Honeywell and did not get that job.
Interesting.
And so on semiconductor, I did. Maybe that was the beginning of it, where I just showed up exactly how I was, and I was accepted. And I was there, I think, around a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I got to travel globally. We went through so many divestitures and acquisitions. The stuff that I learned while working out on semiconductor, you could never teach someone at school.
Sure.
I really learned like change management and how you communicate through massive change. Cause this was like 2007, 2008, when the world was on fire and I was living in my little bubble. People are being furloughed. We're closing fabs. And all that meant for me in my mind was job security. I'm like, I have a lot of stuff to be talking about and helping executives work with their people through. So people aren't living in fear. People understand the changes, or why are we closing this fab and not this one? And so I just showed up to work every day and did my best. I had such a great real world experience. The challenge I had personally through that is I lost my dad in November 2008. It hit me in this, again, you're super young. You don't think that anything is going to happen to your parents when you're that young. And I think the relationship I had made with all my colleagues before that happened really helped, because there wasn't this like pressure of coming back to work after 4 days of bereavement. It was come back to work when you can. My boss was a father himself. I was 21. I worked with lots of much older men and women who held me as kind of the child that I was navigating life now without a father. And the relationship I had with my dad was what you would expect and think of when you think of like a daddy daughter. I was his only daughter. My dad's name was Steven. I'm Stephanie. I was named after my dad. He knew I was going to be his only child. We were thick as thieves from a very young age. My mom was more of the high strung disciplinary. And so my dad and I often teamed up to keep mom happy. He had to run out in the morning to get to a job site and he didn't make the bed, or maybe he left his cigarette in the ashtray and he couldn't remember if he had put it out. He'd call me and be like, "Can you make the bed? Can you make sure I put my cigarette out?" No one wants to come home to the wrath of mom. And so we were a team at a really young age and we just got each other. So I didn't have the kind of relationship with my mom that I had with him. And there's various stages of grief. And when I worked on semiconductor, I could not believe that the sun came up the next day. Like I remember running to Circle K for something and sitting in the passenger seat, just looking around and seeing people pumping gas and seeing people run in for like their big gulp and smiling and talking on the phone. And I remember sitting in the car being like, does anybody realize like my whole life ended yesterday? How is everyone just getting up about their day? And it's just this moment in life that you're like, how is the sun still coming up? What am I supposed to do? And it's realization of my dad was the oldest of 4. So I had 5 cousins. And I was the first one to graduate from college. And I was the first one to have a big girl job. And I say big girl job. When I was working at On Semiconductor, I think I was making $30,000 a year. I could barely pay rent. But my dad was so proud of me, right? My dad never finished college. He just had to work to make ends meet with his hands. So his job was very labor intensive. And so he was proud that I worked at a job that was indoors. I had benefits. I was like a thought worker, which he didn't really understand. He's like, "Wait, you just go in, you like type on a computer all day and talk to people. You don't have to build anything with your hands." And so it just felt like my whole support system, my whole childhood came crashing down.
Yeah.
And I did have really great relationships within On Semiconductor that carried me through that. And so I went from denial to anger.
Sure.
And I stayed in the anger phase for a really long time. I was so angry at the world. I was angry at my mom. I was angry. I was directing my anger everywhere. But as the only child, I didn't have siblings to fall back on and reminisce. And my mom, they had been married for 25 years at that point. My grief got put on the back burner because I had to carry my mom's grief. My mom was now a widow and I was out of the house. So I had to move back in with my mom. I didn't want her to be alone. My dad had hepatitis C. My dad grew up in Williams, Arizona, which is the drug capital of the world. In his 20s, he experimented. He was living life. He was having fun. And those early decisions came back to haunt him later in life because my dad was 54 when he passed. He ended up having cirrhosis of the liver and they did a liver biopsy. And he was getting put on a list for a liver transplant, but they had to get rid of the virus. They had to get rid of the hepatitis C. So at the time, they put him on interferon. At the time, it's brand new. And my mom, being a registered nurse, was the one administering the interferon to my dad, giving him the shots. And it made him so discombobulated that he came home one day and he like drove his truck right into our mailbox. And so my mom was like, something's not right. They ended up giving him something to help get the interferon out of his system. And he was already so immunocompromised that when he started taking this other medicine, he ended up aspirating. And it was like the pneumonia with a really weakened immune system that ultimately ended up killing him. But my mom felt very responsible being the one administering the drug to him. And so she had to live with that. And so it was a lot of me pushing down my own grief to carry her through hers. I wasn't angry at her, but it was almost like this was the role I needed to play. So I started having to plan things for my mom to get excited about. I took my mom to New York. We went on a cruise. I would just plan random Sundays with a pedicure and lunch, things to just get her out of her own home. She ended up retiring a few years later and a few years early because she started not taking care of herself. She was like, I don't have anything to live for. And I remember at the time too, when my dad passed, being really angry at the doctors. And so we had talked to attorneys and they were like, you've got a malpractice case here. And my mom was just like, why fight? It's not going to bring your dad back. And me, I was like gung ho, I'm going to take down this institution. I'm going to take down these doctors. Like I had everything in me. I was like, it might not bring him back, but maybe it will save someone else's dad. Maybe it will prevent some other young woman who's trying to figure out life. Maybe she'll get to keep her dad through that process. And my mom she's, I don't have any fight in me. I'm not going to fight this. And so we were just on two different playing fields with our grief. And I subconsciously just made the decision to honor hers and deal with mine later or on my own.
Yeah.
Which ended up manifesting in by numbing, finding ways to just not feel it or not think about it. And I did that for a really long time until I had friends that were honest enough to say stuff like, we know you're going through a lot. We miss your dad too. He was great. But that your dad wouldn't want you to live like this. Your dad was so proud of everything you were becoming and who you are. And I really needed that to be like, hey, wake up. And when I left On Semiconductor, I ended up going to Insight, which is another global Fortune 500 company headquartered in Phoenix. And I was, again, doing the same thing, kind of supporting the CEO and the CFO through lots of transition, lots of acquisition, lots of changes. And I was still freshly grieving. I think the change, kind of changing jobs every 1 to 2 years, helped keep things fresh. You're learning new organizations, you're learning new executives. The craft didn't really change. Maybe the pace changed a little bit, but I welcomed
Maybe
all of
something
that.
else to focus on.
That's right.
Like when you're somewhere for too long, then everything else rises to the surface. You're like, "Ugh, need to crimp that down. Let's keep it moving." Yeah. No, I
right.
totally understand that.
That's right.
Yeah. I love to move homes because I think it's the same thing. It's like,
It
okay,
is.
set up a new home. Like, and then I'll give me some project to work on. And
Always
Yeah.
a prize.
I love to rearrange furniture. So if we're not moving homes, I'll just redo my own home.
Wallpaper.
It's totally an
There's the
avoidance
paint.
tactic.
100% it is.
Yeah.
And we all do it. I just don't think we're all
Yeah.
willing to label it for what it really is.
Yeah. Any struggles or learning curves when you made that switch to Insight?
When I was On Semiconductor, I had a boss that was very supportive of my own growth. So he didn't have a lot of ego. So when it was like, who was going to write this message to the organization on behalf of the CEO? It was like, hey, do you want to take it? You want me to take it? We were very much a team. There wasn't really this hierarchy of this is my job, this is your job. We just, here was the bucket of work. We got to get it done.
Yeah.
When I moved to Insight, there was more of a hierarchy. And my boss was like, this is my job. That's your job. And I was like, wait, I write on behalf of CEOs. That's what I do. What do you mean that's your job?
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't from a place of like defiance or I'm better than you or I want your job. It was just my lived experience so far. And I connected with the CEO and the CFO and I was like, but I can do this. Why can't this be my job?
And also, why aren't you delegating as the leader? What?
There was just this weird kind of dynamic. But as a young professional, that's how you learn. You learn by working with good, bad, different leaders. It teaches a little bit of like how, again, at the time I wasn't aspiring to be a leader, but it's subconsciously I was picking up like, oh, I don't like the way this makes me feel. I don't like the way she's maybe directing the work or delegating or not delegating. And so I just did what I did best. I started writing stories that moved people and I started telling stories within the organization on behalf of leaders or with my own byline in the company newsletter. And that in and of itself gets noticed. And then I have executives coming to me saying, hey, I really liked this story. Can you write this story? Or we've got this thing bubbling.
Like over your boss's head.
And she didn't like that either.
Ooh.
And so I had my first boss ended up referring me to what was going to be my third job after Insight. And when I interviewed and got that job, my boss was like, see, there was no like, oh, how can we keep you? I think she was happy to see me go. And
She probably felt threatened by your skill.
I think she did. And again, but I was so young, I didn't know how to say that.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to put words to what I was
Sure.
feeling. I was like, just why are you putting me in this box? Let me just do the work. Wasn't even like ego. So it was weird. And again,
No, it was her ego.
it was hers. Yeah. But again, I just didn't have the words.
Yeah,
Never experienced it before.
sure.
And then I move on to University of Phoenix. I worked for Apollo Group, which is the parent company, the largest for-profit university at the time. And when I started there, I think it was like 2009, 2010, they were booming. This is when University of Phoenix was enrolling thousands of students a week. I come into this organization, 22,000 employees. Not long after I started, this was under the Obama's administration when they started pulling the rug out from for-profit education organizations, saying you can no longer enroll a student that doesn't have the whereabouts to actually graduate, to responsibly take out money, complete a program, obtain a degree, and pay it back. So enrollment stopped overnight, right? And so now I am in a role where I've got the president of the university and the chief operating officer saying, we have thousands of employees afraid to pick up the phone and enroll students. I hit the ground running and didn't stop. And immediately I had a boss there that didn't get in my way. He just let me go. And I started attending all these meetings with the president, with the COO, and the COO at the time, I became his right hand. He saw something in me and said, I need you. We're going to get this organization back on track. We're going to communicate regularly, like over the top, communicate on what we're doing, how we're supporting students through this, what the role each employee plays, how it connects to doing the right thing. And I woke up and 6 years had passed and I was still there. But I became a very valuable asset almost overnight just by seeing an opportunity and proactively putting together communication strategies and building a team and supporting this kind of massive effort. I'd come home to my apartment at night, make dinner, and then open the laptop and be like, this message isn't going to write itself. I better just keep going. And so that's when the substance and the numbness really translated into I became a workaholic. And I just poured myself into work because I started seeing and feeling the benefits. All of a sudden, my titles are changing. All of a sudden, I'm getting more money. I didn't have to ask for any of it. It was just given. I just did the work that needed to be done.
You got promoted while there too.
I got promoted twice while there. I was hired in at a manager level and I got promoted to a senior manager and a director in the 5.5 year time. Yeah.
And then, if my calculations are right, then during your time there, you lost your mom and your sister.
I did. So in 2014, my mom got really ill. And I remember being at work. And I also met my now husband at work too. So we were dating for a few years while there. But being in a meeting and my phone ringing, not knowing the number, so I declined it. And then the number calling again. And I answered the phone. And it's, hi, is this Stephanie? My name is Dr. Shaw. I am the on-call doctor. Your mom is in a lot of pain and I need to perform emergency surgery on her right now. Can you come to the hospital? And I just remember opening the door to the meeting I was just in, glaring at my fiance at the time with just tears running down my eyes, leaving, everyone in the meeting looking at Josh saying, you better go. Him following me up the stairs, me grabbing all my stuff and running to the hospital. She was in the ICU for several days. When she moved out of the ICU, she moved into the regular floor. And then the plan was for her to move into long-term care while she rehabbed. And during all of this, my sister, she was drinking a lot at that moment. And I was the power of attorney. And my sister didn't like that. And so all of a sudden, my mom ended up having to have a second surgery before she could go to rehab. And my sister didn't show up at the hospital before or after the second surgery. And I went to my mom's house to find her and confront her and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And she had a bunch of people at my mom's house. Like she had some guy she was dating and all his kids, and they were swimming. And something in me just clicked. I lost it. I was like, everyone get out of my mom's house. I told my sister, you can't stay here. You have to move out. I'm cleaning up while I'm screaming at these people. I'm threatening to call the cops. They leave. My sister locks herself in the bedroom. And I just vividly remember vacuuming while I'm like cleaning up the mess that all these strangers had made in my mom's house while she's at the hospital, like fighting for her life, and slamming the vacuum into my sister's door, calling her every name in the world, telling her what a piece of shit daughter she is. How could she be doing this? All the horrible things that siblings could say to each other. I knew how to push her buttons. I was pushing them. My fiance at the time, his sister, she's a family lawyer in Michigan. And I call her and I'm like, I need an eviction notice. I need you to type something up. When my mom got out of surgery and she was recovering, I took it to the hospital and I made my mom sign it. I go, when you get home, you can't deal with my sister and the state that she's in. We are going to be very selfish. We're going to take care of you. And my mom sat there and cried, and she knew that I was right, and she signed it. And the only reason she was really letting my sister live with her was because my mom is at the point where she was like, I would rather her die here than die on the street, which I wasn't a mom at the time. So I am now, which I understand where that sentiment comes from. But at the time, I was like, you're crazy. You're an enabler.
Right.
And I'm stopping. And my mom signed it. I mailed it to my sister. I taped it on her door. I text her every day. I was like, your time's running out. You better get out. I was as cold as ice. And my mom's back at a normal floor. She's trying to heal. She's trying to get better so that we could move her into this long-term rehab place. And I remember coming home one night and seeing my nephew had posted something on Facebook about my sister being in the hospital. And I was like, what? What in the world? So I call my nephew, and my nephew's like, yeah, my mom, your sister's in the hospital. She's yellow. She's not making a lot of sense.
Oh God.
And I'm like, oh my God. So I turn around, get out of bed. I go to the hospital. She's at the same hospital that my mom is. And she's in the emergency room, and they're giving her all these blood transfusions. And I remember the doctor saying, I don't know how she's walking and talking. She has lost so much blood internally, and her liver is failing. And we're going to keep doing these blood transfusions. She didn't want me there. We were not on the best of terms. And I'm like, we could be in a fight, but you're still my sister.
Still,
Like,
yeah, you're still your sister.
now I'm changing floors, seeing my mom, seeing my sister. My mom is not in a state where she can see my sister. My sister can't see her. And my sister is so unwell. And it was very eye-opening to see firsthand how the medical staff in a hospital institution treats an alcoholic. Because at that point, she needed a new liver. She wasn't a candidate because it was all self-induced. And they basically looked at me and my nephew and they're like, you got to move her to hospice. There's nothing we can do for her. So she's 43, and me and my nephew decided to move her into hospice, and she's got a very strong heart. And so they said openly, hey, this might take a few days. We're going to keep her comfortable, but it will be slow. She's going to lose one organ at a time. And so my nephew never left the hospice. I came and went. And the night that she passed, I was somewhere around like 1 a.m. I had to go back to my mom and tell her that her firstborn had died. And at that time, my mom had been every day kind of getting a little bit better. She was coming around. She was eating more. Her vitals were, I don't want to say doing a 180, but there was
Moving.
improvement.
Yeah.
And that night, I sat there and I held her, and she bawled, as you would imagine any mom would, right? And everything changed in that moment. I think my mom, something inside of her couldn't keep fighting. And so it was exactly a week from the day that my sister died that I lost my mom. She ended up getting septic, and I was there one night went back home, got a call from the doctor that they were putting her into an emergency surgery and that they needed to put a line like into her neck, and I had to approve it. So I said yes. And that was the last time I talked to my mom. So all of that happened in 2014. It was April 30th, I lost my mom, or lost my sister. May 7th, I lost my mom. 3 days before my birthday and Mother's Day, and just 4 months before our wedding was planned. So I remember getting to save the dates for the wedding while my mom was in the hospital and bringing her hurt. And she met my mother-in-law for the first time while she was in the hospital. My future mother-in-law came to see her, and that was the only time they ever met and talked before she passed. So all this happened. I was not even 29 yet. I was 28.
That is so heavy.
Yeah.
And were you still showing up to the office during this time?
So when my sister passed, I had not shown up to the office. While my mom was in the hospital, like after her surgeries, I was coming in, getting my work done, and then going to the hospital before I'd go home. When my sister died, I obviously was not coming into work. And then when my mom passed, off work for several weeks. My mom and dad lived in the same house my whole life. And when my dad passed, my mom didn't do a whole lot to the house. She didn't pack up his stuff. All of his shirts were still hanging up, all of his hats, all of his tools were still in the garage. And then when she passed, I had a house full of 40 years that all by myself I had to take care of. So this was in May. So over the course of June and July, I went through things, and my mom's house sold in August. And 2 days later, I was going to try to go to yoga. So I woke up at 6 a.m. to go to yoga. And I just felt very tight in my chest. And I was like, oh, like, I feel like I can't breathe. Something's wrong. And so my fiance is laying next to me, and I wake him up and I said, something's wrong. Can you take me to the hospital? We drive to St. Joe's. I'm telling them that I had chest pain, which is a key to basically getting in right away.
Yeah.
And they give me some medication. And then these guys in white coats are coming in and they're saying, I'm Dr. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to go run all these tests. We need to figure out what caused your heart attack. And so my fiance at the time is looking at me saying, did he just say heart attack? So I'm now in the hospital for almost 72 hours, running all these tests. I ended up having what was called really intense cardiomyopathy. But apparently there's this thing out there, Dan, called broken heart syndrome, when the mental load of all the emotion takes a physical toll on your body. And there is a very technical term that basically means the broken heart syndrome. But in August, let's say 2-3 months, my doctor was like, you need to take time. You need to take time. And so I took the next 6 weeks off work. It's the only time in my career I didn't have anyone that I was caring for, and I didn't have to work.
And this was before your wedding, right?
This was before our wedding was October 10th. So this happened in August. And so I went back. I ended up going back to work for 2 weeks and then taking more time off work to go get married and have a honeymoon. And I had so many friends be like, call up the wedding, postpone it. And I remember looking at them being like, are you crazy? This is like the only good thing I have ahead of me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not right mentally, but there's no way I'm going to not have this. And so we did. We went forward with the wedding, but I had 6 weeks at home to rest and to take care of my body and
Your
my
whole
mind.
body. It
was awful. It was awful.
So if you hadn't have gone to the hospital, what then? Like, you would have continued, and would it have happened again? I know you have no way of knowing, but
And I never really understood it until I started researching it after. And then I started volunteering with the American Heart Association. And every year they have this big fundraising event, and they asked me to be their keynote speaker to talk about my experience with this, because I think a lot of doctors at the time, and maybe still now, I don't know, I haven't paid much attention to it, felt like this broken heart syndrome was like this fluffy thing. Because there's nothing in a medical book that says when you're sad or when you're carrying grief or when you're carrying all this emotion, it takes a physical toll. But the more progressive doctors are like, no, absolutely. There's connection between the mental state and the emotion and the stress that you're going through and how it manifests inside your body.
When my aunt died, I went for an OB checkup when I was pregnant. And I was like, I'm very worried. I am so depressed. I am so sad. I am not doing well. And I'm very worried for my baby. And I remember her saying, I totally understand, but this happens all the time. I don't mean to diminish what you're going through, but many healthy babies have been delivered. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself and do the best that you can, but everything should be just fine. The demise of the baby was within days or a week of the loss of my aunt. I've rarely said this out loud because I feel like someone who doesn't understand thinks I'm crazy, but I am so convinced that I did it because I was
Impact.
so sad. I just could not function and didn't have the tools to get through it. And I am convinced that my body was like, you're not going to be able to manage. So we're just going to go ahead. I don't know. So I totally understand. I think the body is capable of so much more than we give it credit for. And I feel like we give it a decent amount of credit, but it is so emotionally charged. It's just not wholly physical.
I lived through it. And I think the way your body responds to what you're going through emotionally, that's why people say, and they say it more in like the fitness world, right? Listen to your body. If you're going too hard or you need to pull back, but why is that the only space that we talk about it in? I guess
And
it's
also,
because
what does that mean? Okay, listen to my body and do what? Do I sit down? Do I like not work out? What does that mean?
you pay more attention after that. And I remember every like strong heartbeat or skipped heartbeat, everything in my chest for probably the next 12 to 18 months scared me.
Yeah.
I felt it. I was so anxious about it.
Yeah.
I thought for sure, oh my God, is it going to come back up? And I didn't go through surgery. I wasn't in a cast. I wasn't in a wheelchair. So I went about that time away from work. I would sleep in, I would read books, I'd watch movies, I'd go hiking, I would go to a spin class. I was trying to just mentally give myself space, but it wasn't this, oh, you had this massive surgery and you're healing. So I remember on the outside, people looking at me being like,
you're fine.
Why aren't you working? And I had my bachelorette party during that 6 week. It was already planned. And me and 6 of my friends flew to Nashville and we had this great time. But I remember like my employer at the time being like, I thought you're supposed to be resting. You're not. It was truly like, I need to not be under any stress.
You're like, trust me, I don't want this. I don't want any of it. I'd love to just get back in it, but clearly my body does not agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. The employer. Ooh.
So that was hard to navigate. The structure there, I was a shared service. So I reported into this external affairs department, but I had my clients. So my clients that I served were the president and COO of the University of Phoenix. And they were like, hey, you take care of yourself. My clients were like, you need this time. But my actual boss on paper was like, if you're just going to be hiking mountains, get to work. So when I came back after I got married and my honeymoon, there was not any sympathy for the loss, for the physical and mental toll on my body. And like the whole dynamic of work and the way I felt there changed.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I was at a point where I was like, I'm newly married. I don't know what life looks like now. I don't have my parents. I don't have my sister. I just sold my childhood home. I'm literally rebuilding from scratch, just how it felt. There were people who were not very thoughtful. There were people who were very dismissive. And I was like, hey, yeah, I'm showing up to work. I'm doing my work. I'm putting on a smile. But I am still dealing with this every minute of every hour of every day. And the culture there changed. And I was very focused on my husband and the life that we wanted to build. And so we started looking for a home. We knew we wanted to start a family. We were in our late 20s. We ended up getting pregnant on our honeymoon. Started telling people around Christmas time. And my firstborn came that next August. But it was around the time when I was like, I don't know how much longer I want to stay at Apollo. It just wasn't as fulfilling. Like something had changed. Once we found out we were pregnant, I put career thoughts of moving up or on to the side and just focused on taking care of myself,
Yeah.
being with my husband, building the life we wanted. And work finally, for the first time in a long time, took this back seat.
Interesting.
And it was when that started to shift. I ended up going to this networking event. I was part of this communications, like professional, it was the IABC, so International Association of Business Communicators. So I ended up going to this governor's ball thing one night and was navigating this crowd and ended up standing next to a woman and chit-chatting. And she was the CEO of a home builder. And I'd never heard of her. I'd never heard of this home builder. And she's kind of like, what do you do for work? And I'm telling her what I do. And she's just, oh my gosh, can I get your card? I'd love to talk to you. I am trying to build a communications function. And I have this great growth plan. And we're like just getting started. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, good for you. Go on with your bad self. Okay. And yeah, what would you recommend? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Try this. Like some early communication thoughts on infrastructure and framework. And she ends up calling me and we meet for breakfast. And I'm essentially on this interview process that I didn't know I was on. And I meet her for breakfast. And she's, oh, will you come talk with my CFO and our general counsel? And I start meeting these executives. And I'm like, wow, this is a great team. You've got this great vision. It's really exciting. She ends up slipping this manila envelope across this table to me. And she's, I have to have you. Are you under contract? Are you what? And I'm 6 months pregnant at the time.
Was it visibly pregnant?
I'm tall, so I'm 5'9". It's my first. So I think I hit it well.
Yeah.
I got a long torso. So I wasn't popping out. Maybe she thought I was a little bit chubby or I don't know what she thought, but she had no idea. So she was like, are you under an employment agreement? What's your current situation? I was just like, no, I'm not that important where I am. But I am going to need to take 3 months off in about 3 months. And she's, what do you mean? I was like, I'm pregnant. I'm 6 months pregnant with my first. And she was like, tears in her eyes. She's just, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you. And that is not a concern at all. And this was for a vice president communications job. I had just gotten promoted to a director like 5 seconds ago. And I'm getting this offer to be vice president to basically build
One that you didn't even seek on your
one
own.
that I didn't hit apply for because I wasn't there mentally. I was about to go have a baby. And in my mind, me and my husband are like, maybe I'll go on maternity leave. And then the day before I'm supposed to come back, I'll just tell him I'm not coming back. I'm like building this like FU story in my mind about my current employer while I'm being like sought after and not even really knowing it.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, you don't even know me. You want me to come be a VP? You're giving me way more money than I'm making now. And I'm just going to show up for 90 days and then leave for 90 days. And so I did. So I lose my mom and sister April, May 2014. I have a heart attack in August. I get married in October. I find out I'm pregnant in December. My husband and I buy a house in March of 2015. I get a new job June 1st of 2015. My daughter's born in August of 2015. And I'm just one big life change after the next. And now I'm trying to figure out what it means to be a wife, trying to figure out what it means to be a mom, trying to figure out what it means to be a vice president at a Fortune 500 public company, all at the same time. And then we get pregnant with my son in 2017. So 2 years later, like the company is growing. We're going through acquisitions. I'm putting communication strategies on how are we integrating new home builders and changing branding and positioning. And my CEO is the only female CEO in a male dominated industry. She's like a PR lethal weapon. I'm like, how do I get her in the Sunday New York Times corner office? I'm just doing all these really big things all at the same time without even understanding how monumental one of these things is on its own.
Wow.
And I'm married to a wonderful man who grew up in an environment where nothing was communicated. Thankfully, my husband never went through a lot of hardship. He had never had any loss. So now I have a partner who does not understand anything that I'm going through. I just became a mother while being motherless. I have no one to call. I have no one to tell me if I'm doing this right. I have no one to hold me while I'm figuring out how to carry another human. And the weight of that really didn't hit until my son was born. And postpartum with him looked a lot different than postpartum with my first, because you're in that like gleeful, oh my gosh, I was just obsessed with my baby. I was like, my world became one dimensional. It was just all about her.
Yeah, it's all consuming.
It's all consuming. And then with my son, now I'm navigating, how do I not completely abandon my toddler who turned me into a mother while I'm so excited to have a son, and I'm still navigating work. And 3 to 6 months after my son, I just broke down. So then now my husband and I are like trying to navigate, like, how am I supposed to deal with all the grief that I never dealt with? All while maintaining a very public figure face and trying to be a mom and not drop the ball there. And it was really tough. It was really tough. Marriage was hard. My husband decided to come home and leave his job when my firstborn was probably 7 or 8 months. And it was the right decision. We had a nanny come and work with us when my firstborn was really young, and she had a young child, and she'd bring him to our house. And her son ended up getting really ill, and she had to take time off. And my husband was still at University of Phoenix, and he was going to have to let go of several people on his team. And he called me while I was in Napa on a work trip in my hotel room pumping, and is, hey, I'm thinking I should just negotiate myself out. I've been here a long time. I'll get a good severance. I can come home and be with Hazel. And in my mind, like logically, that made a lot of sense. But I remember like physically with the pumps on, like putting my head between my knees, taking in like as many deep breaths as I could, because now all of a sudden the weight of the world is on my shoulders. Now our future is solely dependent on me. And what's really funny is my mom was a registered nurse, but she was the breadwinner. My dad's work came and went. It was very unpredictable. And my parents fought about money a lot. And I remember as a young child internalizing that and being like, I'm never going to fight about money. And someone's going to take care of me.
This was triggering.
Right. And so my husband's like, yeah, I'm going to come home and you're going to work. And in like an instant, I was like, oh my God, everything I said I wouldn't be. I am now a vice president, traveling for work, pumping in my hotel room for my daughter. My husband is no longer employed. Everything's up to me. I had so many emotions. I'm thinking, okay, my husband, isn't he supposed to be the provider? Is he just throwing away his man card? I have to do everything. That's not what I signed up for. We were equals when we got married. Our salaries were very similar. We were both ambitious. What do I do? I was so young and immature. I didn't have a lot of years under my belt of being married and understanding what it meant, being a team. So there's a lot of resentment, trying to be a mom. It was the hardest, probably 3 years of dealing with grief, dealing with the trauma, dealing with the weight of the world, showing up to work every day, feeding my kids, trying to sleep. I look back now, I now have 3 kids. My youngest was born in 2021. And I have no idea how I survived any of it. No clue. Thankfully, all my kids are healthy, and my husband and our marriage has never been better. But we had a rocky point. We went through marriage counseling. I had to recommit to my grief therapy and figure out how I navigate the loss, how I find space for myself, how I show up for myself while I have 4 people dependent on me. Not just for emotion, but for like literally like the roof over their head, their clothes on their backs, the food in their belly. How do I juggle this all?
On top
Yeah.
of all of this very important career.
My son was born in January 2018. I went back to work April 2018. I got promoted to be a CMO 6 months later. My son was 9 months. I'm traveling. I am learning this new role and how it shows up in the organization and how I build that credibility and stack wins and build a team and find people to follow me. How do I build the skill set and learn so that I can be effective while raising humans, while raising myself? Well,
Feel like imposter syndrome set in more
oh
than
my
ever
gosh.
before?
Oh, it was so bad. I really tried to embrace the whole fake it till you make it.
But because what choice do you have?
I didn't try to boil the ocean.
Yeah.
But I remember flying to New York with my CEO, probably 3.5 years into my tenure as CMO, saying, maybe I was just being honest with her. And I was like, hey, maybe I didn't handle this right. Maybe I should have done this in a reverse order. Here are the things I'm thinking might be next. And her looking at me saying, do you understand how many people were rooting for you to fail? And you have put them and your capabilities and what you could do for this company like up on a flashing billboard, Stephanie. There's no one in this organization rooting for you to fail. You have converted all of those naysayers into believers. And I remember in that moment looking at her being like, who are these people? I want you're telling me
I'm taking names.
I was just showing up every day doing my job and there were people out there hoping I would fail. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know that people could be so ruthless. Who are these people?
Yeah.
And almost now, I wish she would have never told me that. She met and all she said was amazing things. But then in my mind, I was like, gosh, I'm so naive. And now I like almost carry this bias around with me that there are nasty people out there.
Yeah.
I was 33. I was the second female executive.
But it's nothing about you. It's about them because they want to be you.
But you don't,
Yeah,
I didn't have the words. I didn't have the words to explain that to myself. And now I've got this great team and they're like, you don't understand how intimidating you are. And I'm like, what? I wear my heart on my sleeve. What is what you get? I'm an open book. Sometimes I feel like I share more than I should. But I'm like, what is scary about me? Like, I just don't see myself that way. And they're like, no, because you walk around with this aura and this confidence and you're so like, you have this presence. If only you knew all the questions I'm asking myself of, did I do that right? Did I say the right thing? Are people going to figure me out that I have no clue what I'm doing? Someone is going to catch on to me. And then what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I use LinkedIn. I started posting on LinkedIn pretty regularly about 18 months ago. I went to school for journalism because I love to write. But then I 15 years writing on behalf of other people. I became them. And now my CEO today, we are so alike and I believe in her vision. And sometimes when I write for her, I don't know where she ends and I began.
Interesting.
And so I had this epiphany. I have a voice. Stephanie is in there somewhere. I have a lot of opinions and thoughts and I'm passionate and I have a point of view. I need to write it. I need to share it with someone. My husband was like, I don't know. Why don't you just post something on LinkedIn? I was like, what if no one wants to hear what I have to say? He's like, yeah, but what if they do?
Yeah.
And I go, a lot of what I think, like it has to be common sense, right? What I'm thinking, everyone else is thinking. And my husband's like, why would you think that? And so then I just started saying things and people started responding. And I had this one post that went bananas. I had to put my phone in a different room because I got like 8,000 comments. And I was like, what did I do? Do I look like an idiot? Or people like, I can't believe a CMO of a publicly traded Fortune 500 company would say that out loud on LinkedIn. I'm like, am I going to get fired? And then all of a sudden people were like, thank you so much for saying that. That's how I feel. I just don't have the courage to say it. And then people within my own organization started understanding me. They're like, we love the way you think. We love how your brain navigates these scenarios. We learn so much by hearing what you have to say. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's resonating. People. And then I was like, oh no, now I have to keep doing it. I found the Stephanie that was the storyteller again.
Yeah.
And
An outlet.
And I found a way to do it for me and not for someone else.
Yeah.
And so it's been really cathartic. And he's also like my biggest cheerleader.
We have some rapid fire questions. Do you feel successful?
Some days. And probably in the way that I think society makes you define success.
The external markers?
Yes.
Yeah. But if you were to step back, how would you define success?
Finding joy in the small moments and being present with my kids.
What was your dream job as a very young child?
Very random. A dentist.
Really?
I thought that they made so much money. And then as I got older, I was like, ew, you have to be in people's mouth.
Then if you think about evolving as a child into a teenager, what is the path that you didn't take that maybe you would think back and be like, huh, what would have happened?
I was very into music. I thought I was going to be dancing or teaching dancing or dancing in school and college. When I was sad, when I was happy, like music was always just like a part of those emotions as a kid. So probably something in that realm.
What 3 words would you use to describe your career?
Unpredictable, not planned. I guess that's 2 words. Exciting.
I want you to think about all the companies that you've worked for and choose 3 of them and apply the labels love, ultimate fun, skip.
I would probably skip insight. Love on semiconductor, the environment, the boss. I learned so much. I have nothing but fond memories of thinking about the people, the buildings, the culture, the experience, the trust I was given. Then I would say at my current employer's ultimate fun. I have been able to handpick and assemble the team I work with every day. There's lots of mutual respect and adoration and admiration, and we get to do really cool things.
Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing.
It is an honor to share, and I hope it helps someone navigate a hard moment.
It will. There's no doubt it will.
I'm uniquely positioned now, having lived through it, to help someone else because I wish I would have had that.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Effing Up. I'm your host, Deanne Reinard. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to support the podcast, please subscribe on the platform you use to enjoy podcasts. Share Effing Up with others, post about it on social media, and or leave a rating and review. Until next time, count your perceived failures as part of your path to success. After all, we're all effing up.